Every club. Every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Daily Newcastle podcast. It's my favourite time of the week. It's Wildcard Wednesday, but it's not that wild today, but I'll go into that into a second. It's been a week where Leicester did their best Houdini impression. Chelsea got more than physical to inspire a comeback. And it turns out we're still in training season with regards to Newcastle after a 4-2 loss to Brentford. And there may well be new rules as the Man City court case was finally brought to a close. I think that's an easy introduction, but I think Michael's got it already by the look of it. Was he watching ITV at the weekend?
The Dua Lipa love
straight away. So that last one, when I talked about, obviously, the court case, we're going to come to that in a second, but we've got two guests to introduce. You already know one of them, but I'm going to introduce the other one first because, we'll keep it a secret for as long as possible. I am joined by, someone who did host a Wildcard Wednesday, so I'm now calling it Jeopardy Joe. That just failed, didn't it, Jeopardy Joe?
It was a complete failure, wasn't it? Yeah, exactly.
Jeopardy
Jeopardy
quiz.
Joe's completely failed on explaining what Jeopardy was to apparently a much younger Kev, but I'll get over it. Hi.
I don't know Kev, what Jeopardy is, but now you're known as Jeopardy Joe. So, yeah, it is what it is. Right, I did ruin it, to be fair. It's actually my fault. And some call my next guest, Menopausal Michael, but we mostly call him Magnificent Michael. That's the reaction I wanted. I actually did say it's Magnificent Michael at the end. I did give him a lot of credit. We call him Magnificent Michael. How you doing, Michael? Are you okay?
It's all right. Apparently, I've either turned into a woman or a magician. To be honest, definitely much rather the woman. So let's keep it at that. But yeah, I'm doing well. Not to offend any magicians who listen to this.
Magicians just switched off everywhere. Like, no, I'm not having that.
Just lost half the audience.
Houdini.
Well done. I think that might be my favourite ever start to a Wildcard Wednesday. To be fair, Joe did come out with this is more of a mild card Wednesday. I'm not going to take credit for that. Joe came out with that one. And it's because we're going to talk about financial fair play. Oh my God, if I had a sound effect, I would add it. Exactly. Well, thanks, Joe. Joe's now a sound effect. Brilliant. So actually, a little bit of information we're going to talk about how fan-friendly it is. It's not actually called financial fair play anymore. We don't refer to it as that. It's now profitability and sustainability rules, which, that's a mouthful overall, isn't it? We really want it to be fan-friendly. I'm going to try and keep this as short as possible because I don't want to make people switch off and I don't want to send you to sleep because hopefully you're driving to work, right? So clubs can pretty much lose up to 105 million each. Now, 15 million pound of that, all right, is kind of their own money. So they can lose 15 million pound, and then the owners are allowed to chuck in 90 million pound, which is like guaranteed funding. So that's where the 105 million pound comes from. Now, there's loads of barriers to this, and I really want to get your opinions on what financial fair play is. Is it correct? We all know it stunts Newcastle. Let's be honest. We're going to keep it Newcastle-based throughout, but I struggle to see the positives of this, and I see so many barriers with it. So I think I'm going to come to Michael first because, I give him a harsh introduction in terms of being a woman or a magician.
Hey, being a woman is not harsh. That's half of our listenership, you D-I-C-K.
Wow. Go, Michael.
Feminism.
Yep. I was going to make a joke about feminism being about hating men, but I also don't want to cause loads of controversy. So
wow.
I'm just gonna pass to Michael, who's got his fist in the air, representing the women here. Michael, financial fair play / PSR. Is it actually going to work long term? Should it be scrapped? How do you feel about it?
I'll be honest. It probably, when you look at the context of sort of the Venkies at Blackburn, them coming in, Blackburn pretty much died as a club after that. Thankfully, They managed to stay in the Championship. Leeds had their financial problems. But you can sort of see why it was sort of needed, this something to stop owners, taking the mick as such. But let's be honest, we had Mike Ashley for 10 years, 12 years, 13 years, whatever it was. It felt like 50. But I think it's just one of those where it doesn't really take into account, this owner's doing bad for your club. If anything, it's just going, right, well, you're not going to be able to overspend and do a Man City. And, when you look at West Ham of Sullivan, Gold, they've got a lot of money behind them. They're not able to spend. Aston Villa, it's not just Newcastle who have got all this money behind them and being restricted. Villa and Newcastle should probably be top 4 in the next 5 years based on or consistently top 4, should I say.
Good point.
With what we've got coming forward, with the money behind them. But I do agree that something should be in place so it's not just richest owners win. I do like that. But come on, you're restricting everyone. And let's be honest, Man United have how much debt?
I was going to come to that in terms of they have, I think I've read, and it's different everywhere, but I've read like billion. That's a big number to have that much debt and still be allowed to, spend any sort of money when you're trying to restrict others just seems ludicrous. There was also somebody on TalkSport who said Man United got more of a COVID payment than other clubs, which again, I mean, you're not doing yourself any favours if it's to make it fair if other clubs are getting favourable treatment. And what I do find amazing, I did say 105 million over, like 105 million, but it's over 3 years. So if you were to even that out, it's called secure funding, by the way. That £90 million, which comes from owners, is called secure funding. So over 3 years, that would be, 5 million per year pre-tax losses. There's a 15 million the club can't make less of. And then that means the funding from the secure funding from the owners has to be 30 million a year to take it up to 90 to make that 105 million over 3 years. That is insanely small for clubs who do, like, I know we're biased because we're Newcastle and we have the richest owners in the world, but come on, can we not just raise that secure funding to, like, rather than 105 over 3 years, make it 405 over 3 years? That would help. But yeah, anyway, Joe, what are your thoughts on PSR as it is now rather than financial fair play?
Well, kind of joking, but not really. I did joke at the time when they renamed it because financial fair play, there's nothing fair about it, is there? So they probably, have they dropped it because it's not fair? It certainly ain't fair play. But anyway, that's my little joke out the way because that's about as much as I think about the name change. But yeah, I mean, I know exactly. Thanks, Michael. But yeah, it's interesting that you brought up the Man U thing because this whole profit thing, of course, they've been a huge club for a long time. They've got a huge amount of income. I understand that. So I do understand how it works in terms of income and outgoings and stuff like that. And moving forward, they'll always have it because they are a huge club and it's as simple as that. But surely this whole profit and sustainability to me, never mind the profit bit, that's kind of explains it, yeah? Sustainability, should that not take into account debt? I don't get how a club, and I'm not just going to use these as a single club because I appreciate other clubs have got debt. But like you said, it's like $1 billion plus, I don't know. It's absolutely insane that they're allowed to operate on that sort of kind of model, if you want to call it that. Yet you've got the likes of ourselves and Villa, etc., because it is not just affecting us, and I appreciate that. I don't know, it's just a massive frustration because if this is going to stay in place and if those exact figures that you've just read out are going to be the figures moving forward, I can't see how any of us, Villa, etc., are going to break into the top 6, the top 4 consistently. I figure what will happen has been a bit like what we've just done. We had a top 4, we did 6. This year, let's not talk about it too much. But what I mean is, we're just going to be this kind of yo-yo bobbing up and down. Yeah, we'll hit it again. We'll not hit it again. And Villa will keep doing that as well. Look what's happening to them. Yet you got the likes of City and that that's just insane anyway in its own right. All the things that they've kind of been getting away with. But yeah, I don't know. It's not fan friendly. It's not anyone friendly. In fact, no, sorry, it's top 6 friendly. It's as simple as that.
Whoa, well done, Joe. Well done. I was just going to come on to that. I think the big issue is, I mean, I'm trying not to just chuck numbers at you. I've tried to explain secure funding where the owners are allowed to contribute 90 million so that it doesn't lose more than 105 and it can lose 15. Chucking these numbers around is just pointless because, I mean, it's not fan friendly. Fans don't really know what we can spend, what we can't spend. And I tell you what's absolutely crazy. There'll be people getting paid a lot of money, and there'll be clubs out there who they won't even be 100% sure. They'll be like, because when you read online, it says that it takes into account wages, it takes into account transfer fees, stuff doing, things happening out in the community, infrastructure. What does that cover? What are you allowed? We're going to talk about in part 2 a little bit how everything got done for the new stadium. We're going to link it to Newcastle's potential new stadium, but we don't know, and that's the biggest issue. Is we haven't got a clue what we're allowed to spend money on, what we're not allowed to spend money on. But what would make sense is surely it goes on a percentage of how rich your owners are. Because if you're talking about secure funding, Newcastle United have 300-400 billion pounds or something like that. Which is just unbelievable. I mean, that's secure. If they get in debt and they are the custodians of the club, as they keep telling us, we're secure. We can afford to lose a little bit of money. I mean, yes, if they leave and we get a different owner, then I get it. Right, we might have to, just ease it up a little bit. But yeah, we'll come to that in part 2 because there's still so much to talk about. But we have to get our first sponsor message out of the way, and that is going to be delivered to you from the Zencastr queen. That is Jo herself.
Thank you. Here at Global Sports Podcast Network, we spent a lot of time selecting our delivery platform. Zencastr came out the clear winner with 4K video recording from your phone and AI editing that automatically removes all those ums and ahs. It's super easy to start a podcast that sounds great and is delivered efficiently, sometimes. If you're ready to tell your story, check out the link in the show description to learn more about Zencastr.
Well done, Jo. Good recovery, good resilience. But ever since you've said the girls are more professional than the boys, I think you've messed it up every time.
It's all gone wrong. It's gone wrong. I trip myself up every time. And if I'm honest, the more and more I'm called the Zencastr queen, the more it's like this massive pressure on my shoulders. And then I can't spit it out, literally. Never mind.
Right, I think in part 2 we're going to stick with PSR because I think we just get all of mild card Wednesday out in one episode, don't we? But I want to ask the question: is it there for the right reasons? And what I mean by this is Newcastle are talking about building a new stadium. Now Everton got a point deduction, and when you look into that, I couldn't believe this, by the way. When you look into that, it's because, or part of it is because of the cost of a new stadium, which. Yeah. That's infrastructure, I get it, but that's going to generate more income, just like Newcastle United potentially want to with our potential new stadium. I can't bring myself to say it yet because it's still potential and I don't want it to happen. But it's a case of, is it there for the right reasons? I kind of like, in a way, what Nottingham Forest did, right? They said, forget you, Premier League. We're going to break the rules. You can give us your point deduction. And this season, we're sat 5th because we have invested and have brought in some very good players. Unfortunately, at our expense, taking Elliot Anderson off us, which again, it affected us in terms of having to sell Minter, which might be the solution to our right wing problem. And we lost Anderson, an option in centre midfield, who's a homegrown talent. So I'm asking, is it there for the right reasons? Because it's affecting a lot of clubs negatively. It's either point deductions or you're having to sell players you don't want to sell. It's going to become like trading, I think. So everyone stays under certain numbers over a certain amount of years. So I guess what I want to go into now is, do we think it's there for the right reasons? And the other question I want to ask as a bonus is, have you got any idea how to fix this other than making it more fan-friendly? We've heard, I think Simon Jordan on TalkSport has said, if you pay 60 million a transfer, you actually pay 120 million. And that extra 60 million is there in case the club goes into trouble or the owners sell up. There's a 60 million pot which we bring back in, and that helps clear whatever debt is left. So you're almost paying 2 pots for 2 transfers, which I think is not a horrendous idea, but it's not quite polished. So I want your ideas on how we make it better. And I want to know, do you think it's there for the right reasons genuinely? Because Leeds, Michael mentioned it before, clubs have went down to League One, have had financial troubles, had to sell players on the cheap. Bury FC kind of exist again, but we don't exist in the same format because they had to fold, and that's not what we want to see any club do. So yeah, is it there for the right reasons, and how do we fix it? I'm going to come to Jo first this time.
No, it's not there for the right reasons. No, come on. I think anyone outside of the top 6 is probably going to say that because we all feel that way. We're just being brutally honest, aren't we, really?
But if we take that away, though, in terms of, like, obviously Newcastle aren't in that position because we have rich owners, but if we were in potential of going bust, this would stop us going bust in a little way, potentially. So that's what I mean by, is it there for right reasons? I don't know. I really don't know. I want to think it is.
To a degree.
Okay.
Yeah. I understand to a degree, and I think there has to be something in place. I'm not saying there has to be nothing in place, by the way. In no shape or form saying that us or any other team, by the way, should just be able to spend whatever we want, even though some clubs seem to be able to in the past, but that's by the by at this point. Yes, all right, we've got the richest owners in the world, all this sort of jazz. And technically, yeah, like you said before, we've got potentially what seems like unlimited funds as a backup in terms of security. However, it doesn't mean I think we should just be allowed to go off and spend $1 billion in the summer window. You know what I mean? It's just not realistic, and I'm not at all claiming that. So there should be some limits. I think it just needs to be reviewed to the degree where it's fair overall, because at the minute, on the surface of it, as we all know, it looks like a massive protection of the so-called top six, big six, whatever you want to call them, hate six. Like, yeah, I don't know. I'm just sorry. I'm on a tangent now.
It's fine. It's good.
You get my gist, don't you?
It's interesting because it does bring out a lot of emotion, and I feel sorry for Villa. Villa qualified for the Champions League. I'm going to try and take my Newcastle hat off, and they had to sell their best midfielder just so they could kind of try and strengthen in depth for the Champions League. That can't be right. But the other side of it is there's clubs, who don't have a lot of income, don't have a lot of money. I don't want to say smaller teams because it's just a massive business now anyway, but maybe it is protecting teams, and we don't see it protecting teams because there's no teams going bust anymore. So, is it working? I guess is what I'm trying to see. Is there a different opinion? Now, I've gambled on Michael here because I think Michael is arguably one of the most intelligent on the pod. So I think if anyone's going to fix this problem, it might be Michael. So, without any pressure, Michael.
I'll take back what I called you before. You're a lovely, lovely man.
So, is it there for the right reasons? And have you got any ideas how on earth we fix this, or even make new rules to make it fair?
Yeah, I think one of the things you sort of have to look at when you're taking into consideration is sort of the oddities and the rarities of, let's say, Leicester. When unfortunately their chairman had the helicopter crash, there wasn't really any contingency plan in place for that because no one thought about it. And I think one of the reasons for PSR, financial fair play, whatever you wanted to call it, was so that in the worst scenarios, clubs could still, function. Leicester did end up going down, unfortunately. Came straight back up and are doing very, very well. But I think it's there for the right reasons, but there's the wrong people at the head of it. So there's a lot of people who are involved with the Premier League at the moment who you can tell are getting their pockets lined. I ain't gonna name any names, but it's every time something comes up, it's how do we squash this? Sort of Newcastle getting taken over by the Saudis. How can we make sure this doesn't happen again? Chelsea's using a loophole, and then them going immediately. Well, how can we stop every other team doing this? So Chelsea have had the advantage, but no one else would. And I think potentially the way forward is sort of the American system of a salary and a wage cap. So, but it couldn't be done by just the Premier League. It would have to be done universally by UEFA, and it could be added into UEFA's financial fair play rules that they use for the Champions League, for example, where it could say, look, no player is allowed to have over. It's tough to say now because salaries have vastly increased, particularly with Saudi. That's kind of the one thing that's ruined my plan, sort of thing. Maybe China with Oscar as well.
Yeah.
But if they'd say, look, the highest wage a player can have is $200,000 a week. And then, there's additions onto that. It's still a very lucrative sum that you can separate a Cole Palmer from a Sean Longstaff.
Oh, I thought you were going to go Jacob Murphy. I was going to gamble there.
So you could separate, you could definitely separate them enough so you could see the levels in players. But I think the NFL is an example of how it's done well. And if we are going to end up with this commercialized version of the Premier League, who's better at commercializing everything than the Americans?
Yep.
So maybe take some leaves out of their book.
We love the Americans, we do. Let's just copy off everything we do. I think you've got a great point there. And I agree with the wage cap, but my issue there would be you've got Cole Palmer on $200K a week. but then all you would do is just say, well, actually, you'll get 100k appearance fee, 100k non-use substitute fee. So either way, they're getting it because the bonuses are there, and clubs will find a way around it. And I think that's the frustrating thing here is the clubs who are the so-called Big Six or who are already established commercially, like Man United, huge club, Chelsea, Man City are up there now. It seems like they're always going to have an advantage because they'll just find loopholes where they can manipulate figures like that. And I think a wage cap is a great idea, but my issue then is, can you just cancel all additional kind of sums after that? In terms, you can't have an appearance fee anymore. You can't have a non-use substitute fee. You can't have a goal bonus anymore. I don't know how much ruling you could take over it, how much it then turns into just clubs taking the Premier League to court. We've already seen Man City do it. It could get very messy. And I think that's the issue we're having now is, I think when it was first brought in, Michael made a great point. It was brought in place for the right reasons, but the problem is the wrong people are now running it. And that was a brilliant thing to say, because I think we all can agree with that. And it's I wish I kind of thought of it myself, if I'm honest, but I give Michael the credit. But yeah, that is where the issue is now. How do we get them people out? How do we make it fair? But how do we do it where there isn't just complete uproar in the Premier League's in court case after court case after court case? It's going to be very, very difficult. Yeah, right. 100%. We've got a tiny bit more to talk about in terms of Newcastle and FFP in part 3, and then we've got a little quiz. But before that, we need our second sponsorship message, which is brought to us from the magician that is Michael.
I told you, out of the two options, I didn't want the magician. But I am actually going to magic up the correct GSPN advert, because no one on this pod's ever used it.
Doesn't exist.
That's true.
The Global Sports Podcast Network is changing the face of football podcasting with dedicated daily content for every Premier League team, women's football, fantasy football, and a daily Premier League wrap-up, broadcast in 5 languages. This is your one-stop shop to your daily football fix. Find GSPN wherever you find your usual podcasts.
I tell you what, that is actually a great advert. I wish we could use that
Michael,
one
man.
more.
We should just record him.
Send that to all of us, please.
We just record your voice.
We should only use. But yeah, excellent again, Michael. Well done. So I guess part 3, what I want to do is I want to talk about Newcastle's situation and our relationship with FFP, because let's face it, it's been nothing but a negative one. It seems to me, I'm going to put my kind of thoughts in first, and then I just want you guys to either add to it, take away from it, or say, Kev, you're talking absolute rubbish. It seems like, I don't know if I'm being a typical paranoid fan here, right? Or if it's like Newcastle against the world, they hate Northerners. I don't know if it's that, right? But it seems like every time Newcastle try and do something, try and open up a door, which other clubs have done in the past, the Premier League are like, nope, we're going to shut that door. That can't be done anymore. You must ask us for permission. And that just feels so unfair. Why aren't we taking the Premier League to court? Because let's face it, a lot of these new rules were brought in, and it's said in a documentary by Amanda, which was brilliant to hear. A lot of these new rules were just brought in because they were scared of us. Or again, am I being a typical Newcastle fan, man? Thinking, are the Premier League not really that bothered about Newcastle? We're not that important to them. But in my head, it's like, why can't we call our training ground Saudi Airways Park or Saudi Airlines Park and charge ourselves 100 billion for it? And that goes... We then brought in the advertisement rule where it has to go through a Premier League, it has to be fit and proper and all that rubbish. That's never existed before. That was brought in because we had our owners. That's how it feels anyway. So, Michael, you'll be the first to tell us, am I talking a whole load of rubbish, or do I maybe have a point that we're genuinely terrified of Newcastle's spending power?
Oh, no, I think you've genuinely got a point. But what I would say is, could you imagine if there were 2 Manchester Cities and Newcastle weren't the second one? We'd be absolutely fuming. If this was Sunderland, on the other hand, that geezer that bought them for £10, £1, whatever it was, imagine if that was a Saudi prince, he's took them into the Premier League, they're the next Man City, we'd be absolutely foaming. So there is a point of, having a second city would be horrible for the league. It is unfortunate that they've decided to clamp it down when it's us, and not originally when it was Manchester City. But I think they are going to stop us every single time they can. But I think And there was a little bit of this in the documentary as well. It's just sort of trying to walk before we can run to try and figure out what we could get away with and what we can't.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why we haven't seen some of the mick take that you see with sponsorships from other clubs just yet.
Yeah.
Because, you know, we could have a leg tattoo sponsorship or whatever it is. Yeah, for our players. Yeah, we could get all these ridiculous sponsors in, but it's a case of everything we do is going to be heavily scrutinised. And until sort of there's some changes at the Premier League at the head, that's not going to change.
Yeah, unfortunately not. It does seem like it's just I agree with everything you said, actually, but I think a second city, if it's Newcastle United, it's great for the league because we get the challenge for titles, and you know we
would,
yeah. But and again, just to go back to your Sunderland thing, I don't think any Saudi prince is interested in Sunderland because I mean, who is Sunderland?
They couldn't point to it on a map.
Don't know where it is.
Exactly. No, I haven't got an airport. We have to fly from Newcastle, don't we? Anyway, we'll come to Joe. Joe, do you think it is just anti-Newcastle? Or am I being a little bit over the top? Is it not anti-Newcastle, but it's kind of anti-competition, maybe? I don't know.
I mean, I've got no right, because I've said exactly what you've just said plenty of times, and I think many Geordies have, haven't they? You know, we do feel very picked on sometimes, and we're not as bad as the Scousers, you know, because we're not as woe is me as them, but, you know.
We're offending a lot of people today. I like it.
It's got to be done, man.
No, but
in
get
reality,
yourself in the conversation.
Exactly, yeah. Fight me. It's fine. I'll just not read it. I'm only joking. But no, it is a strange one because you've got to sometimes take your kind of Newcastle bias hat off. And I do still think, even with that hat off, they are still a bit against us because it did seem perfectly timed that when they had to pass in the end and they couldn't block the takeover going through, which I do still believe that they are so mad that they couldn't because they tried everything possible to try and stop this takeover. Let's get real. And they spent a lot of time trying to stop it because it could have went through a lot faster than it did. We all know that. And people outside of the club know that, surely. In the end, they couldn't do it. They had to admit defeat and they had to pass it. So how do they get us back? They restrict us. So that kind of feels, and again, it's like, am I being biased here or am I actually being a bit spot on that it's almost like we'll let you do it, but yeah, you're not going to spend anywhere near what you guys think you're going to spend type of, I don't know, attitude. And I see where Michael's coming from, by the way, because if this happened to the Mackhams, we would hate them as much as they hate us because they are jealous. Of course they're jealous.
We don't even know who we are.
They don't know where they are, but even if they happen to find out where they were... Like someone was pointing on a map and their finger slipped a bit south. The point is, I do understand that, but they're already jealous as hell of us. Now they're even more jealous. I mean, naturally so. I mean, come on. You'd be mad as hell if your rivals were like this rich, apparently. So they must be licking their chops that we can't spend the money that we can. But then I'd laugh right back at them and I'd say, you know, guys, come on, man. You can't even get it yourselves out of the Championship either. But that's another conversation because this is a whole other pod and I'm probably going to take up all the time now. But yeah, it's a strange one. So yeah, I agree with you is what I'm saying, Kev. But in reality, it's probably not as bad towards us as we want to think or make out.
I think again, I know I joked at the start, obviously the mild card Wednesday and not a very wild one, but actually I think this stuff has to be spoken about because fans, it's not, we go back to the original point, it's not fan friendly. None of us really know what comes under infrastructure and all that stuff. So, and we haven't
got a clue.
Yeah, exactly. We haven't even touched on Leicester saying that they weren't in the Premier League or the Championship for a period, so they got away with a points deduction when they got promoted back up because they were in between leagues. The fact that that's even a loophole, who drew up that contract? Bugs Bunny. What's going on there? Unbelievable. Anyway, it is still Wildcard Wednesday, even though it has been a little bit different. So we are going to end with a very, very quick quiz. And it's only one question. I'm just going to see who gets either the most answers or closest to the top. You might have seen it on social media. I really hope you haven't, because if you have, it's going to ruin the whole thing. But we'll see. So... Let's have a look. I'm not going to tell you why I'm asking this question. I'll tell you at the end why I'm asking it because it might give away a couple of answers. Newcastle United's all-time Premier League goals. Everybody know, obviously, Alan Shearer's top and all that stuff. But what about assists? So I've got Newcastle United's top 10 assist makers. I think we just go in turn and see how many you can name. So Premier League era only. There's some surprising names on here, by the way. Who makes Newcastle United's top 10 most Premier League assists? We'll go ladies.
Oh.
We'll go ladies first, who might just nick Michael's answer. Actually, wait. No, Michael is a lady today. Michael, you go first.
Oh, he is. Let him go first.
You go first.
Nobby Solano.
Yes, bang on. He is number one, Michael.
Yeah.
54 assists, by the way. That's insane. He wasn't even
incredible.
there for a massive amount of time either. So, yeah, 54 assists. Nobby Solano, number one. Joe, name one.
I was going to say Dyer.
Kieran Dyer's on there. He is fifth with 32 assists. So he's still, quite a way behind Nobby Solano, but that's a good effort, especially someone who was injured quite a lot. Michael, can you name anybody else in the top 10?
Trying to think. Shola Amiobi.
Great answer. He's one behind Kieran Dyer. Played for us for a lot of years. Played as a striker, lots of knockdowns. I think he's got two of the best assists I've ever seen. He knocked the ball down for Shearer when he hit the volley against Everton. And he's also got the assist when he headed the ball or flicked the ball into Shearer's path to score the record-breaking goal. So Shola's got two fantastic assists. Joe, back to you.
Rob Lee.
Number 3. 34 assists. He's joint third, by the way. But yes, Rob Lee is on there. So far, we have Solano, Rob Lee, Kieran Dyer, and Shola Amiobi. Michael?
I am going to go for Shearer.
Alan Shearer, number 2. You've now got the top 3. Alan Shearer, 40 assists again.
Nice.
There for around about 10 years. Played up front after flick-ons. Him and Bellamy had a good partnership. Makes sense. So we got Solano, Shearer, Lee, Dyer, Amiobi. Joe.
Strange enough, you've literally just sent the answer I was going to give, so hopefully he's there. Is it Bellamy?
Craig Bellamy is not in our top 10 all-time assists. I don't think he was there for long enough, was he? He was more of a, he ran the channels and probably got them pre-assists. But yeah, he's not on. He's not there. There is some surprising names coming up, by the way. I'm going to end it in a second. Joe's got one wrong. Michael, that means Joe, you're out. Michael, you're on your own. How many more can you get?
Probably none. But I will give it a try. I'm going to go... I don't think he was here for long enough, but I'm going to go James Milner.
James Milner, you're out. He's also not there. He's not on our all-time top 10. So I'll go through
Tied game.
Solano is top with 54. Shearer is second with 40. Rob Lee, 34. Joint with Rob Lee is Lauren Robert, 34 assists. Lots of corners taken.
I thought he was too selfish.
Taken. Yeah. Kieran Dyer, 32. Shola Amiobi, 31 assists. Peter Beasley is 7th. 26 assists. Are probably all for Andy Cole, but we know about that partnership. I'm going to skip number 8 because this is the reason why I'm asking the question. Number 9 is Matt Ritchie. It's actually joint with 3 players on 9th. Matt Ritchie with 19. Alan Saint-Maximin on 19. And Charles Nzogbia is joint.
That's insane.
Yeah.
That's insane.
That's quite surprising. I quite like them little stats. However, number 8, who I didn't mention, now on 20 assists, thanks to 2 at the weekend, is Jacob Murphy. He's 8th. All-time Premier League assists.
Yes,
He's 8th.
Mr. Murphy.
Well done, Murph. Getting on that list.
Hang on. Jacob
I'm so
Murphy
mad I
had more
didn't say
assists
my boy.
for us than,
I love
James
that.
Milner and all that.
Yep.
That's insane.
He has
Mad,
indeed.
isn't it?
Unbelievable. Go on the Premier League website.
But he's just your bog standard squad player, did you not know?
He is. But we all love him. Right.
We do.
That's been a brilliant episode. I've thoroughly enjoyed it, as always. Thank you very much, Michael and Joe, for your time. We've got crossover tomorrow, so make sure you tune in for that, as it's a massive game against Leicester. You'll hear from us tomorrow. Until then.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.